There are mysteries the ocean keeps, but sometimes the ocean spits them back out for one horrifying moment. This is the story of a ghost ship that carried a crew of dead men, their faces frozen in a final agonizing scream. The year was 1947. The world was still settling after the chaos of war, but the shipping lanes of the busy Strait of Malacca, the vital artery connecting the Indian Ocean to the Pacific, were, as always, humming with commerce. Yet, on a quiet stretch of open water, an electronic phantom began to whisper across the airwaves. The signal was frantic. It was a distress call, a raw, high-stakes transmission breaking through the standard chatter. It came from a Dutch freighter named the SS Ourang Medan. The name itself means man from Medan, referencing the city in Indonesia, but soon it would come to signify something much more sinister. Two American vessels, the SS City of Baltimore and the Silver Star, were the closest to the transmission source. Their radio operators scribbled down the broken, terrifying words. The first part was standard protocol, coordinates, ship name. But then the message took a hard, horrifying turn into the unknown. The voice on the other end, identified as the Ourang Medan's radio operator, was shaky, desperate, but clear enough to be understood. All officers, including captain, are dead lying in chart room and bridge. Possibly whole crew dead. I die. A second burst of Morse code followed, containing only two agonizing words. I die. Then absolute, immediate silence. The SOS transmission was cut off mid-word, mid-breath, leaving the radio operators on the American ships staring at their transcription pads, a knot of cold dread tightening in their stomachs. This was not a standard emergency. This was a horror unfolding in real time, somewhere just over the horizon. The Silver Star, being marginally closer, changed course immediately. The rescue mission was on, but it was fraught with confusion. What could kill an entire crew so quickly, so completely, that the last man could only whisper his own demise? Pirates? Unlikely, given the speed and totality of the event. A sudden, massive explosion? If so, why was the ship still transmitting? Hours later, under the relentless tropical sun, the Silver Star sighted the Ourang Medan. The Dutch freighter was afloat, steady, and appeared perfectly intact. There were no visible scorch marks, no damage to the hull, no evidence of a recent collision or massive wave. Everything about the scene suggested a ship peacefully drifting in a calm sea. It was this eerie normalcy that first chilled the Silver Star's captain, an old sea dog who knew the ocean rarely delivered peace without a fight. The captain organized a small boarding party. They climbed the rope ladder and stepped onto the silent deck. The air was thick, heavy, and strangely cold despite the equatorial heat. The silence was absolute. There was no engine noise, no sound of wind in the rigging, not even the normal creak and groan of a ship on the water. The first member of the boarding party stopped dead on the forecastle. What they saw defied explanation, logic, and the very laws of life and death. The entire crew of the Ourang Medan was dead. They weren't merely corpses. They were victims of a singular, profound terror. The deck was littered with bodies. Men were sprawled where they had been standing, at the helm, near the railings, climbing ladders. Every single body was frozen in the same terrifying posture. Arms outstretched, seemingly warding off an unseen attacker, their heads tilted back, and their mouths agape in a silent, eternal scream. The rescue crew moved cautiously, their boots crunching softly on the deck, the silence amplifying their rising panic. The captain was found in the chart room, his eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, his hand frozen mid-air, pointing toward the door. The radio operator, the one who sent the frantic SOS, was still slumped at his post, his skeletal fingers resting on the Morse key, his face a mask of pure, absolute horror. Even the ship's dog was found dead, curled up near the galley door, frozen in a snarling, terrified crouch. The sheer horror of the scene was magnified by the complete lack of physical injury. There were no bullet holes, no stab wounds, no signs of a struggle. It was as if a sudden, invisible force, an atmospheric entity, a poison gas, or something far more esoteric, had instantly killed every living thing on board, locking their final emotion into their physical form. The rescue team staggered back, struggling to process the visual evidence of unspeakable terror. They realized the air inside the ship was intensely suffocating, causing a burning sensation in their lungs, a strange coldness in their extremities, and a debilitating nausea. This was clearly the killer, a poison, but what kind? They had to find the source. They had to retrieve the ship's log, but time was running out. The mystery and the final inferno. The initial objective of the boarding party, to render aid and tow the ship, instantly shifted to grim forensics. What killed these men? The horror on their faces suggested something deeply personal, something they saw or knew was coming, yet could not fight. The common theory of a chemical weapon or nerve agent seemed plausible, but it failed to explain the postures of extreme physical fear. A chemical attack might cause paralysis or rapid death, but would it freeze a man's last second of pure emotional terror onto his face? The Silver Star's captain, relaying the horrifying situation, ordered the boarding party to prioritize the discovery of the Ourang Medan's manifest or cargo papers. The smell was worsening, a potent combination of sulfur, ammonia, and something acrid and metallic. The metal in the lower decks was strangely hot to the touch, and smoke was beginning to seep from the cargo hold vents. The boarding team descended into the main hold. The heat was overwhelming, radiating from the floor and walls, yet the corpses they passed in the corridors were bizarrely cold. This contradiction only heightened the unease. The cargo of the Ourang Medan was officially listed as general goods, but rumors had long circulated in the post-war Far East shipping world about vessels carrying dangerous, undeclared wartime chemicals. In the brief time they spent below deck, the team found nothing concrete about the cargo, but the smoke was growing thicker, and a small fire had broken out in the forward hold. The situation was rapidly deteriorating from a forensic mystery into a catastrophic emergency. The structure of the Dutch freighter itself seemed to be rejecting its occupants, both living and dead. Suddenly, an intense, uncontrolled fire erupted in the number 3 hold. Whether it was spontaneous combustion from volatile, hidden cargo or a reaction caused by the strange atmospheric conditions in the air, the rescue crew didn't wait to find out. The Ourang Medan was becoming a blazing coffin. The order was given to abandon ship. The boarding party scrambled back up the rope ladders, fleeing the accelerating inferno. They had only been aboard for perhaps an hour, but it felt like a lifetime spent in the antechamber of hell. The Silver Star pulled back to a safe distance, watching in stunned silence as the Ourang Medan went through its final terrifying moments. The flames quickly engulfed the entire forward section of the freighter. The heat finally found whatever volatile material was hidden below deck, perhaps the source of the mysterious choking agent. With a deafening roar, the SS Ourang Medan exploded. The force was tremendous, throwing debris hundreds of feet into the air. What little remained of the Dutch freighter buckled and tore itself apart. Within minutes, the burning fragments were swallowed by the sea, taking the ship, its horrific cargo, and the final, terrifying secret of its crew's demise to the bottom of the Malacca Strait. The perfect crime, the perfect mystery, was sealed under thousands of feet of water. The Silver Star steamed away, its crew shaken and unable to offer a single logical explanation for the scene they had witnessed. All that remained was the distress call, the eyewitness testimony of the Silver Star crew, and the persistent, chilling question: what invisible horror could freeze a man in a pose of pure, agonizing terror, yet leave his body physically unmarked? The subsequent official inquiry struggled to make sense of the incident. Without the wreck, they had only anecdotal evidence and a handful of conflicting reports. Theories ranged from highly volatile wartime nerve gas stored illegally, to carbon monoxide poisoning, to a leak of nitroglycerin reacting with seawater. Yet none of these fully accounted for the unique, consistent expressions of terror on the faces of every single dead man. The story of the Ourang Medan has persisted through decades, passed down in maritime history books and shipping lore. It endures because of the simple, potent, and utterly terrifying lack of a logical explanation. It is the ultimate ghost ship story, not because the ship was haunted, but because the men aboard were victims of a final, unseen, existential dread. The enduring legacy of terror. The legend of the SS Ourang Medan is the perfect blend of nautical lore and psychological horror, a case so clean in its mystery and so visceral in its imagery that it continues to plague those who study the ocean as enigmas. The official records regarding the ship are themselves fragmented and disputed, leading many skeptics to categorize the entire incident as a magnificent piece of maritime urban legend, a composite of multiple smaller, less dramatic shipping disasters, woven into a terrifying whole. However, the core narrative, the SOS call, the faces of terror, the sudden inferno, is often cited as one of the most compelling and terrifying unsolved maritime cases. The consistency of the accounts from the Silver Star crew members is hard to ignore, giving the tale a disturbing foundation in reality. One of the most persistent theories attempts to solve the paradox of the unmarked bodies and the expressions of terror with a single chemical explanation: a massive leak of sulfuric acid or cyanide compounds reacting with seawater. These chemicals, often used in industrial processes, could produce deadly hydrogen sulfide or cyanide gas. While these gases kill rapidly, the theory struggles to explain why the men were all frozen in a posture of defense against an unseen threat, rather than merely collapsing. The rapid onset of symptoms would have left little time for such a universal dramatic reaction. A far more dramatic, though less scientific theory involves the concept of an atmospheric bubble or some form of geological event. The Strait of Malacca is known for its seismically active seabed. Could a sudden massive release of methane gas, a known phenomenon where pockets of gas escape the seabed, have enveloped the ship? Methane, while not inherently toxic, displaces oxygen rapidly. The symptoms of severe oxygen deprivation include confusion, dizziness, and then, in rapid progression, convulsions and terror-induced panic as the brain struggles against suffocation. This theory provides a plausible explanation for the suddenness, the invisibility of the killer, and the visible panic. The ignition of the methane in the cargo hold could then explain the final, catastrophic explosion that consumed the evidence. Yet, even the most rational theories fail to capture the sheer, unsettling power of the central image. The entire crew, dead, eyes wide, arms outstretched, pointing at nothing. It is this image that cements the Ourang Medan's place in the pantheon of nautical horror. It forces us to confront the idea of a death so absolute and so shocking that it transcends the simple biological function of dying. The legacy of the Ourang Medan is a stark reminder that even with modern technology, the deep ocean remains a place of profound mystery. The ship, which sailed into the light of the tropical sun and into the shadow of unimaginable fear, took its secret to a watery grave. It remains a terrifying blank space in history, a terrifying story without an ending, leaving us only with the echo of a frantic, dying voice. I die. For those who continue to search the murky depths of history, the Ourang Medan is the ultimate cautionary tale, a warning broadcast from the grave that sometimes the most terrifying truths are the ones we can never truly understand, sealed away not by pirates or storms, but by the relentless, crushing silence of the deep. It is a story designed to make you check your doors, to listen for whispers on the wind, and to fear the empty, open sea. The dead men of the Ourang Medan may be gone, but the silence they left behind still screams.